Good morning, Lifepoint Church. Ta-da, Ben. I wasn't sure if you were going to make it.
It was close. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Good to see you all. Good to see you all. Wonderful. Wonderful. We are so glad that you're here with us this morning. If you're with us online, this morning, I'm so sorry that you're not able to be here with us in person because, man, it's going to be fun today. We're going to have a good time today. But hey, look, take just a second and check in the chat box, and let those who are with us online know that you're with them, and that you're a part of that part of our congregation this morning. If you're with us online or here in the building, and you want to participate in our digital content this morning, get your phone out. Take a picture of our QR code, and it'll take you to a section of the YouVersion Bible app that is our digital content this morning. We've got some reflection questions. We have some additional information on some aspects of what's going on in the message today that we can't give you in person. So if you enjoy that, it's a great way to engage with what's going on this morning with one additional level. Okay, I'm scanning the room because I want to make sure that I see every single person here at the Rude family pumpkin party and potluck on Saturday at the Rude House. Most fun event of the year. Sorry, Christmas. I will tell you, my children have been working on their jack-o'-lantern patterns for days, and so you're going to have there's going to be some real competition this year. But no, seriously, that starts at, if you want to come and carve pumpkin with us, that starts at 3:00 on Saturday afternoon. If you just want to come for dinner, that starts at 5:30, and it will extend as late as you want to be there, or so I am told. Every year. No, it's great. It's great. After service this morning, whether you're with us online or in the room, stick around. We've got our Lifepoint family meeting. We've got sharing stories of what's been going on for the last few months, what we're looking at in the future. It's going to be good. Stick around with us for that. If you have children in children's ministry, we do want to ask you to go pick them up after the service and bring them back in here so that our children's team can come and be a part of that as well. If, however, you have children in the nursery, we will have nursery workers throughout the family meeting as well. Make sense? Okay. This morning is going to be wonderful. It's going to be wonderful. And so let's begin our time by orienting our mind and our heart into a place that proclaims to Jesus we know who he is and we know where he belongs, which is at the center of everything. And so let's go to the Lord in prayer. Lord, all of this is about you and it is for you. Everything that we say and everything that we sing and everything that we pray and everything that we play and every video that we show, it's all for you. In fact, our even coming into this place is for you. And so take all of this, take our service and take our heart this morning and draw us into your embrace. Show us, don't just tell us, but show us, let us feel that we are your children, we are your treasure, we are chosen, we are your loved ones, we are your workmanship. We have purpose and we have value and we have intentionality because of who you are and who you have made us. We pray according to your identity and your character. Amen.
Amen. If you like using a hymnal, this morning we are singing several hymns that have fun choruses. So the first one is Grace Greater Than Our Sin, 344. And altos, tenors, and basses sing out. Please stand and join us as we sing.
Marvelous grace of our loving Lord, grace that exceeds our sin and our guilt. Yonder on Calvary's mount outpoured, there where the blood of the Lamb was spilled. Marvelous grace, infinite grace, grace that will pardon and cleanse within. Marvelous grace, infinite grace, grace that is greater than all our sin. Sin and despair like the sea waves cold threaten the soul with infinite loss. Grace that is greater, yes, grace untold, points to the refuge, the mighty cross. Grace, grace, infinite grace, grace that will pardon and cleanse within. Marvelous grace, infinite grace, grace that is greater than all our sin.
Verse 4.
Marvelous, infinite, matchless grace, freely bestowed on all who believe. You that are longing to see His face, will you this moment His grace receive? Marvelous grace, infinite grace, grace that will pardon and cleanse within. Marvelous grace, infinite grace, grace that is greater than all our sin.
Then turn to 347.
And can it be that I should gain an interest in the Savior's love? Died He for me, who caused His Father's throne above, so free, so infinite His grace, emptied Himself of all but love, and bled for Adam's helpless race. 'Tis mercy all immense and free, for oh my God, it found out me. Amazing love, how can it be that thou, my God, shouldst die for me?
Verse 4.
No condemnation now I dread, Jesus and all in Him is mine. Alive in Him, my living head, and clothed in righteousness divine. Bold I approach the eternal throne, and claim the crown through Christ my own. Amazing love, how can it be that thou, my God, shouldst die for thee?
348.
I stand amazed in the presence of Jesus the Nazarene, and wonder how He would love me, a sinner condemned unclean. Oh, how marvelous, oh, how wonderful, and my song shall ever be. Oh, how marvelous, oh, how wonderful is my Savior's love for me.
Verse 4.
He took my sins and my sorrows, He made them His very own. He bore the burden to Calvary, and suffered and died alone. Oh, how marvelous, oh, how wonderful, and my song shall ever be. Oh, how marvelous, oh, how wonderful is my Savior's love for me.
Well done. Thank you. Be seated.
Get comfortable. We're following a long passage today. A reading from Romans chapter 2, verses 25 to chapter 3, verses 22. This is from the Bible for Everyone. Circumcision, you see, has real value for people who keep the law. If, however, you break the law, your circumcision becomes uncircumcision. Meanwhile, if uncircumcised people keep the law's requirements, their uncircumcision will be regarded as circumcision, won't it? So people who are by nature uncircumcised, but who fulfill the law, will pass judgment on people like you who possess the letter of the law and circumcision, but who break the law. The Jew isn't the person who appears to be one, you see, Nor is circumcision what it appears to be, a matter of physical flesh. The Jew is the one in secret, and circumcision is a matter of the heart, in the spirit rather than the letter. Such a person gets praise, not from humans, but from God. What advantage then does the Jew possess? What indeed is the point of circumcision? A great deal in every way. To begin with, the Jews were entrusted with God's oracles. What follows from that? If some of them were unfaithful to their commission, does their unfaithfulness nullify God's faithfulness? Certainly not. Let God be true and every human being false. As the Bible says, so that you may be found in the right in what you say and may win the victory when you come to court. But if our being in the wrong proves that God is in the right, what are we going to say? That God is unjust to inflict anger on people? I'm reducing things to a human scale. Certainly not. How then could God judge the world? But if God's truthfulness grows all the greater and brings him glory in and through my falsehood, why am I still being condemned as a sinner? And why not do evil so that good may come, as some people blasphemously say about us, and as some allege that we say? People like that, at least, deserve the judgment they get. What then? Are we, in fact, better off? No, certainly not. I've already laid down this charge, you see. Jews as well as Greeks are all under the power of sin. This is what the Bible says. No one is in the right, nobody at all. No one understands or goes looking for God. All of them alike have wandered astray. Together they have become futile. None of them behaves kindly, no, not one. Their throat is an open grave. They use their tongues to deceive. The poison of vipers is under their lips. Their mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are quick when there's blood to be shed. Disaster and wretchedness are in their paths, and they did not know the way of peace. They have no fear of God before their eyes. Now, we know that whatever the law says, it is speaking to those who are in the law. The purpose of this is that every mouth may be stopped and the whole world may be brought to the bar of God's judgment. No mere mortal, you see, can be declared to be in the right before God on the basis of the works of the law. What you get through the law is the knowledge of sin. But now, quite apart from the law, though the law and the prophets bore witness to it, God's covenant justice has been displayed. God's covenant justice comes into operation through the faithfulness of Jesus the Messiah for the benefit of all who have faith.
Please stand again with us as we continue in worship.
There's nothing worth more that will ever come close. Nothing can compare. You're our living hope. Your presence, Lord. I've tasted and seen of the sweetest of loves, where my heart becomes free and my shame is undone. In your presence, Lord. Holy Spirit, presence, let us experience the glory of your goodness. Let us become more aware of your presence. Let us experience the glory of your goodness. Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for, to be overcome by your presence, Lord.
Amen.
Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. And I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. Come on, church. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, but still I found leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs. We pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will
Children, you are dismissed for Sunday school. Everyone, you may be seated.
I love that. I got a question for you this morning. Is God all-powerful? See a lot of nodding. Does anyone think that maybe he isn't? Okay, let me rephrase the question a little bit. Can God do anything? Really? Anything in life? So can God sin? Well, no, but that's kind of a trick question, right? Yeah, so God can do anything except that's which is outside of his character, and sin is those things that are outside the character of God. So let's make maybe a little bit more direct a question. Could God make the world in any way that he wanted to make it? Man, there's a lot. I've surrounded myself with yes people. What am I doing here? Could God make a rock so large and heavy that even he couldn't lift it? Well, come on. What do you think? What do you think? If the answer was yes, then we would be saying that there would be something that God couldn't do. And if the answer is no, no, God can't create a scenario where he then couldn't do something, then we're still saying that there's something God can't do. This is did anybody hear this in like a college philosophy class, or some stupid friend from another church came to your high school saying, I bet I can stump you? This is actually an 800-year-old philosophy problem called the paradox of the stone. And actually, if you have access to a digital content this morning, there's a link in there to a 200-page analysis of this problem. I didn't write it, but somebody did. And if you're a big enough nerd to read that, tell me, because we need to grab coffee. No, this is an example of a self-contradictory statement. It's similar to the question, check this out, if a dog says, what I'm saying to you right now is a lie, is he actually lying? If a dog says, what I'm saying to you right now is a lie, is he actually lying? See, the problem is, well, imaginary world. The dog can't be lying. The dog can't be lying because then what he would be saying would be a true statement. And he can't be telling the truth because then his statement would be a lie. Let me ask, anyone feel like their brain is wrapped up in a knot right now? A little bit? Like every solution to the problem is a dead end? Let me ask, do you ever experience situations like this in your life? Like no matter what you choose, you lose. Parents, let me ask you, do you ever feel like you can either work real hard and provide for your family and your children, resulting in your children feeling like you're never home, or you can be home with your children more and work less and not provide for them what you think they need? Let me ask you, have you ever had a boyfriend or a girlfriend and you really like them. Maybe you even think that you might love them, but you're just not sure that they're the one. But what do? You've already invested so much in this relationship. If you let it go, you may never even have this again. But if you don't let it go, you might spend your whole life wondering, did I miss the one because I was in a relationship with someone who wasn't? Business owners, have you ever been in a situation where business is rough and you feel stuck between a rock and a hard place of, on the one hand, disappointing some of your employees by laying them off because of insufficient revenue, or disappointing all of your employees later on when the business goes under? As we continue in our series on Romans, we're going to see Paul's Jewish readers getting stuck in one of these self-contradictory loops, except that in this case, it's not an accident. Paul is employing this. He's using this intentionally to prepare them for the declaration of Jesus as God's answer to the problems in the world that we'll look at next week later in Romans chapter 3. But for the last few weeks in our study, we've been looking at the reality that in the church in Rome, there were Jews and there were Gentiles. And 2 weeks ago, we looked at the end of chapter 2 of Paul's letter at how the Jews thought that they were God's answer to the brokenness in our world, that they were God's answer to the brokenness in our world. And why did they think that they were God's answer? Because that's what God had told them. That's what God had told them. Because God had told them that his plan was to bring the world back to himself and to his purposes through a faithful Israel. However, throughout their thousands of years of history, the Jews, or the Israelites, had been a lot of unfaithful. But even when they were unfaithful, God was faithful to bring them back into a healthy place with him and to reaffirm that he was going to bring a light to the world through a faithful, but the answer is a faithful Israel. So let's try this again. That he would bring a light to the world through, man, you guys are smart. And now it was the late 50s AD, and Jesus the Messiah had come and died and been resurrected, and the world was still full of sin. The world was still broken. They were still being held captive. And so there was this idea among some of the Jewish followers of Jesus that Jesus must have come and died and been resurrected so that now the Jews can finally be who God always intended them to be, which is a light to the blind and a guide to those in darkness. That the thing that Jesus did is that Jesus made the Jews able to be who they were always meant to be. But the focus was still on the Jews. But now we're at the beginning of chapter 3 of Romans, and Paul has just spent the whole last chapter showing that being a Jew isn't even what makes you a part of God's people. What is it that makes you a part of God's people? Having a heart that's submissive to God. That's what makes you a part of God's people, according to Paul in chapter 2. And even though all of this is being written by Paul, we're not reading a dictation of a conversation, but we kind of are reading a dictation of a conversation, because this is not the first time Paul's ever had this conversation with a group of Jews. And particularly being a Jew, Paul knows the kinds of thoughts that Jews have when he talks about these things, and he knows the kinds of questions that comes up when he talks about these things. And so what we're reading in the first part of chapter 3 is almost like Paul is walking us through the question and answer that he's had with hundreds of Jews before. And we find in verse 1 of chapter 3, we find one of these questions in an almost huffy kind of way. Paul asks, sort of playing the part of this Jew that's offended that someone would suggest that the Jews aren't at the center of God's plan. He asks this, he says, if being a part of God's people just requires a submissive heart, well then what's the point of being a Jew? What's the point of being a descendant of Abraham and a descendant of David and passing through the Red Sea and coming out of Egypt and being given the 10 Commandments and the Mosaic Law of wandering in the desert, of crossing the river and going into Jordan, of hearing from the prophets, of building in the temple, of everything that God had done for thousands of years to develop a nation for himself. What's the point of all of this? If you're telling us, Paul, that God isn't going to make the world right through our group, then what was the point of any of this to begin with? In your home, growing up, was there a particular ideology or a particular political party or a particular group that everyone just sort of acknowledged if there was going to be any hope for the community, the nation, the world, it was going to be through this group? Growing up in West Kentucky, most people were a part of one political party. I won't tell you which political party, but most people were part of one political party. My family were members of the other political party. And so every time that there was an election or every time that something happened in the news, our dinner table conversation always tended to wrap its way around back to how our political party was the only right political party. Even to the point of softly suggesting that it would be very difficult for a person to be a follower of Jesus and not be a member of that political party. I'm seeing, some of you know what I'm talking about here. Well, when I turned 18 and I went down to the courthouse to register to vote, I was well in the swing of late adolescence rebellion. Anybody remember late adolescence rebellion? And I didn't really want to register for our political party because I just didn't want to. And I definitely didn't want to register for the other primary political party because only heathens register are part of that. So I registered as a communist because I thought it would be funny. Except that when I got home and told my parents, they lost their mind. And my mother was sure that there would be a day that I would be blacklisted from whatever job I was trying to get because when I was 18 years old, I thought it would be funny to check the communist box on the registration, on the voter registration. So my mom made me go down the next day and change it. Now, take my mom's level of anxiety about me not registering for our political party and multiply it by 1 billion, and you have the level of anxiety connected to what it meant to be a Jew here in the first century. And at the end of chapter 2, Paul has just challenged all of this. And so here in verse 1 of chapter 3, we find Paul playing both sides of the conversation and asking one of these questions. He says, what advantage then does the Jew possess? What indeed is the point of circumcision? Again, with circumcision and the law, we're really talking about being a Jew. It's not just trust me. What's the point of being a Jew? Paul answers, there is a huge significance in being a part of the Jewish nation. To begin with, the Jews were entrusted with God's oracles. Now, if we aren't careful here, we'll get this picture in our mind of God choosing the Jews and giving them something for them to keep safe for themselves. But what's the word that Paul uses here? He uses the word entrusted. What does the word entrusted mean? When you entrust someone with a thing, you are giving it to them to keep for someone else. And what is it that God has entrusted? The oracles of God. Literally, the sayings of God, which might lead us to think that Paul's talking about the scriptures, except that in the Roman Empire, when a person wanted to hear from a god, not the Yahweh God, but a god, they would go to a temple or they would go to a oracle, to a living oracle. Paul writes that the Jews were entrusted with the oracles of God, but this could also read that Jews were entrusted as the oracles of God. Either way, the emphasis isn't on them, it's on others. We talked about how God made the nation of Israel a kingdom of priests. What did a priest do? A priest reflected the nature and the character of their God down into creation, and then reflected up to their God the worship of creation. God entrusted the Jews as the oracles of God, meaning that his point wasn't to say, hey, I've got my people, the rest of you all can suck an egg. He's saying, I've got my people to draw everyone else to me. And no matter what angle we look at this from, in the history of the Jews, they had failed miserably. They failed miserably at giving to the world what God had given to them. Their whole mantra was, you guys stay over here, we're going to stay over here, we're the special ones, and if you want this, you can have this by becoming one of us. Okay, so God had promised to bring restoration to the world through a faithful... God had promised to bring restoration to the world through a faithful Israel, but Israel had consistently been unfaithful. So God's plans must have been messed up because of Israel. Yeah? Make sense? Paul says no. Paul writes this, he says, what follows from that? If some of them were unfaithful to their commission, does their unfaithfulness nullify God's faithfulness? Certainly not. Let God be true and every human being false, as the Bible says, so that you may be found in the right in what you say and may win the victory when you come to court. This is a line from 2 Samuel chapter 11. After David has sinned with Bathsheba and killed Uriah, Bathsheba's husband, and is lamenting and repenting, this is some of the lines of that. And what David's doing is he's saying to God, my sin makes your glory shine, or your faithfulness shine even brighter. So the people's unfaithfulness doesn't mess up God's faithfulness. It shows God's, okay, got it. So the people's unfaithfulness shows God to be even more faithful, so that there must not actually even be a problem here, and the faithlessness of Israel must be showing God's faithfulness, and so in the end, Israel won't really be judged along with everyone else because their faithlessness worked into God's plans, right? Paul says no. Paul says no. Apparently, some people had taken what Paul was teaching and had drawn it out to this conclusion. To say, can we go back one page, guys? To say, why not do evil so that good may come? Paul is showing this to be so ridiculous that he doesn't even directly contradict it. He just says, this is insane. But at the end of verse 8, we can almost feel Paul's readers shaking their heads in confusion. Okay, God has promised to heal the world through but Israel has been just as unfaithful as the rest of the world. And the world doesn't have any chance on their own of becoming who God designed them to be, and the faithful Israel, the unfaithful Israel, doesn't have any chance of becoming on their own who God chose them to be, and yet God's plans have not been thwarted, and God is still going to heal the world through that logic doesn't add up. So so sure, Israel has been unfaithful, but if God's going to use Israel to be the medium through which God brings restoration and healing to the world, then there must be something about Israel that's better than everyone else, right? There must be something about Israel, about the Israelites, that are more special than everyone else, right? Paul says no. Again, Paul says no. And then he proceeds to spend the next 9 verses pulling from various passages throughout Psalms that talk about the consequences when people put pieces of other things where God says that he should be. We can feel the tension building for Paul's Jewish readers. God promised to fix the world through Israel, and God will fulfill the promises through Israel, but Israelites are just as hopelessly broken as everyone else. So again, Paul, what's the point of being Jewish? Paul already told them the first half of that question. He says the second half in verse 19, the purpose of this is that every mouth may be stopped and the whole world may be brought to the bar of God's judgment. Anybody remember in the book of Acts when Paul he's come before the Sanhedrin, he's been arrested, and he's standing before the high priest, and he's sharing, and the high priest decides that he's done listening, and he tells one of the soldiers to strike Paul on the mouth. Anybody remember that? That's because, why did he tell the soldier to strike Paul on the mouth? Because in Jewish legal procedure, when you were completely finished with your own defense, when you have nothing more to say, you would put your hand over your mouth as a way of indicating, I have nothing more to bring in my own defense. The high priest was saying to Paul, through striking him on the mouth, shut up, you're done. This is what Paul says here. The purpose of this is that every mouth may be stopped and the whole world may be brought to the bar of God's judgment. Both of these are first century legal terms. The one meaning I have nothing more to say in my defense, the other being when it was time for judgment to be declared, the person who's defending themselves would come and kneel before the Sanhedrin, be brought to the bar. In other words, all that God had done with Israel was to show that even with all the help available to the Jews, even with the Old Testament scriptures, even with the cultural reminders and the Sabbath reminders, with the special holidays and all that was wrapped into those, with the Jewish temple in Jerusalem, with the thousands of years of prophets, those gifted with all those advantages, the Jews still sat in humility and brokenness and judgment before a just and merciful God. Let me ask you, when you are telling someone about Jesus, do you tend to use you language or do you tend to use us language? Jesus died for... I'm not asking what's true, I'm asking how do you phrase it? In Numbers chapter 20, Moses commits a sin that prevents him from being allowed to go into the promised land. He strikes a rock with his staff, and water pours out against the instructions of God. God told him to speak to the rock. He got frustrated and struck the rock. And there are instances in the scriptures of God wanting things to be done exactly the way that he instructs. But in this particular instance, when we look at what Moses says to the Israelite people before he strikes the rock, we find Moses getting frustrated with the people's lack of faith and putting himself with God rather than with the people. Hear now, you rebels, shall we bring water for you out of this rock? Who is the we? Me and God. In some ways, I got to admit, in some ways I can relate to Moses, the way Moses is feeling here. As a career pastor, I have spent 8 years and almost $80,000 of seminary education. And I've read over 250,000 pages of Christian literature, and I've spent over 15,000 hours studying the scriptures, so that I can tell you that all of that makes zero difference when we come before God. I and the 10 students that became believers this summer through the work here come to God in the same place as broken sinners in need of rescue. Paul says that the role of God, the role that God had for the Jews was so that the Jews could bring the whole world to the bar of justice, to bring the whole world together at God's feet in one place together with God as king and judge and rescuer through Israel. But we still have the problem of how God is going to bring rescue through Israel. Again, if the nation is just as sinful as everyone else, I get that we keep repeating this over and over again, but we have yet to have an answer. If the nation of Israel is just as sinful as everyone else, and then we realize that that's the answer. Check out verse 21. It's verse 20. No mere mortal, your Bible might say no human being, you see, can be declared to be in the right before God on the basis of the works of the law, on the basis of being a Jew. What you get through the law is the knowledge of sin. And it almost feels like Paul has finally directly contradicted himself. If no human being can be declared to be in the right before God, if no human being is sufficiently faithful, then how can God bring healing and restoration to the world through a faithful Israel? What God needs is one faithful Israelite. God needs one faithful Jew. And he has one. And his name is Jesus. But now, quite apart from the law, though the law and the prophets bore witness to it, God's covenant justice has been displayed. God's covenant justice comes into operation through the faithfulness of Jesus the Messiah for the benefit of all who have faith. Paul's Jewish readers were stuck in an endless circular pattern of looking at the problem and having every option come up as a dead end. Yeah, God has a plan for us, and it requires us being faithful to him, but we are terrible at being faithful. And so we must have messed up God's plan. Oh, but you can't mess up God's plans, which means we have to be better. But we can't be better, but we have to be better. And then we just collapse in exhaustion. What are you stuck in the middle of right now? And no matter how you look at the problem, all you come up with is a dead end. This week, my family and I went to the Pine Tree Apple Orchard and did their corn maze. We did it again. We did it last year as well. This year, I brought a GPS and mapped it. Because last year, I thought I was going to die in that maze. When you're walking through a corn maze surrounded by children laughing and playing, and you go far enough that you don't hear children anymore, and every time you come to an intersection, it looks just exactly like every intersection you've been at, you start to wonder, will my wife send someone after me, or will she think I'm playing a trick and leave me for dead? You're probably good at corn mazes, but maybe in your life there's a relationship. Maybe with a loved one, maybe with a friend, maybe with someone at work, maybe with a child. And no matter how hard you try or what you say or what you do, it just feels like you keep coming up empty in this relationship. Or maybe it's your finances, and no matter how hard you work and how much you earn or how little you spend, it always feels like you're coming up just a little bit under what you need. Whatever it is in your life, you know the thing that you focus on and you focus on and you focus more attention on the problem, and whether you look to the left or to the right or forward or backward, whatever it is, you come up with dead end after dead end after dead end. If a dog says, what I'm saying to you right now is a lie, is he actually lying? The answer is, yes, Lori, dogs don't talk. The answer doesn't come in staring at the problem. It comes in stepping back and looking up and realizing there's a problem with the scenario. Could God make a rock so large that even he couldn't lift it? The answer is yes. And then when it came time to lift it, he'd lift it anyway. The problem isn't with a lack in God or a lack in the power of God. The problem is with the question. The answer isn't found in analyzing the logic of God's power. The answer is found in looking up from the broken question and reminding ourselves of who God is. Our world is full of situations that feel like there's no way out and every option is a dead end. And our world tells us that we just haven't put the time in yet. We haven't focused on the problem enough. And sometimes that's right. But often, the life that we talk about so much here, the abundant life that Jesus talked about and the scriptures attest to, is found in that life and that hope and that peace and that guidance is found in stepping back and looking up from the broken questions and the broken problems in our broken world. And letting God remind us and show us of who he is and what he has done and who he has made us. Next week, we're going to look at Romans 3, 20 and 21 and 22 and 23 and 24, the verses that show up on all of our throw pillows. But this week, in fact, before this day is out, I can almost guarantee you that there will be a situation that feels like all the good options are dead ends. There will be an opportunity to step back and take a breath and look up from a situation that feels like there is no out. And trust that for all of the problems and the questions that really matter, Jesus is the answer. When you realize that you are getting caught in an endless loop of looking down, step back and look up.
Let's exalt the Lord together. Will you please stand one more time as we continue worship? For thou, O Lord, art high above all the earth. Thou art exalted far above all gods. For thou, O Lord, art high above all the
guys come? We found out a couple of weeks ago. Actually, let me start again. I came here 3 years ago. And when I came here 3 years ago, I joined a staff that was in many ways led by a woman named Renee Nelson. She would say, no, that's not true, but she's lying, just like that dog. Renee has been with us for 20 years on staff and decades before that as a part of the Lifepoint family. And Renee, in many ways, has been the stable one on our staff through everything that's happened in the last 3 years. And so when Renee came to me a couple of weeks ago saying, it's time to retire, I knew that was coming, but it still just kind of hit. Because the truth is, Renee is the heart of who we are as a staff, and in many ways the heart of who we are as Lifepoint. And so, just as we normally do with staff, we wanted to bring Renee and her family, Mark and her kids and their family, and we wanted, number one, to say thank you. Yeah, can we say thank you? And just like we do with everyone who leaves Lifepoint, we want to pray over them and send them into the next phase of life. But before we do that, Ross.
So it can't be 20 years. And then Tracy said, look in the mirror. It is 20 years. You've changed. I am one of a large group of people that is honored to call you and your family friends. And I remember being in Sunday school with you when you were considering taking this position. And your main concern was the big shoes you'd have to fill. She took her mother's job. I couldn't do that because my mom would tell me what I was doing wrong. But your mom told you everything you were doing right. Do you want to say anything to the people? We're going to have an opportunity. People are going to come up and love on you. Do you want to say anything?
Just thank you for the opportunity to serve here and to serve our God through this church. And I figured out the other day it's 45 years that at least once a week I was in this building. So my car may automatically come here at times. I don't know. But thank you so much.
I have the honor on behalf of the Board of Stewards and the congregation here at Lifepoint Church of presenting you with this small token of our affection for all you've done.
We're going to pray with Renee and Mark and their family, and then we're going to come up here and pretend like COVID isn't a thing and just cover them hugs and kisses. Because if there's one thing Renee is, it's a hugger and a kisser. No, that's not true. That's a joke. That's a joke. That's a joke. But we do want you to have the opportunity to tell them how much you love them and are grateful for them. But then don't stay away too long because we're starting our Lifepoint family meeting. Again, parents, if you can, go grab your kids out of children's ministry. If you need to drop them off in the nursery, that's okay. But you can also bring them in here. But we'll start that in just a few minutes. But let's pray. Lord, we know that you are the giver of every good gift. And the Nelson family have been such a good gift to us. And so we express our gratitude to them, but we express our gratitude to you for the Nelson family and the Rude family and everyone as we look around this place that you have given to us for this time. for everything that you have given to us for this time. And we reflect back on that as we affirm and trust you that no matter what the future holds for Renee and for Mark and their family, no matter what the future holds for us, we trust that you will continue to give good gifts to your people. In your precious and holy name we pray. Amen. Don't leave without saying hi to Renee and Mark.
I'll never be more loved than I am right now. Wasn't holding you up, so there's nothing I can do to let you down. It doesn't take a trophy to make you proud. I'll never be more loved than I am right now. Ooh.
Going through a storm, but I won't go down. I hear your voice carried in the rhythm of the wind to call me out. You would cross an ocean, so I wouldn't drown. You've never been closer than you are right now.
Let's sing it out, y'all.
You If he dresses the lilies with beauty and splendor,
to breathe the air of heaven, where pain is gone and mercy fills the streets, to look upon the one who bled to save me and walk with him for all eternity. There will be a day when all will bow before him. There will be a day when death will be no more. Standing face to face with he died and rose again. Holy, holy is the Lord. In every prayer we prayed in desperation. The songs of faith we sang you down to fear. But in the end, we see it all was worth it when he deserved.
Test. Excellent. Thank you. Good morning, folks. Did everyone get a chance to hug Renee? If not, go get her. Go get her. You should have received a copy of the last quarterly business meeting, family meetings minutes. If you didn't, raise your hand. We'll get you a copy. If you did, take a look at them. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to take a look. You're looking to see if there's anything you would change, revise, amend. You're looking for typos, anything like that. All right, so please go ahead and review those minutes. Over here, please. That's a true story that I told if you weren't in here when Shirley was thinking about resigning as church secretary. And boy, just have your daughter do it. That'd be great. I don't know about you, but the idea of stepping into a role my parent had done for decades, that's kind of overwhelming. And in Sunday school, we had a couple conversations about that. And we were affirming, you can do it, you're great. And she is, and she was, without a doubt. But true story. Once you feel you've had sufficient time to review the minutes, let me know if there's anything you see that should be corrected, amended, changed, revised, typos, syntax, improper use of a semicolon, anything like that. Knowing who keeps these minutes, I'd be shocked if there was an error. So that said, when you feel ready, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of the Lord, and misused a bracket. I'll look for a motion to accept the minutes as corrected. Oh, look at that. Look at that. It's not an annual meeting, it's a quarterly meeting. So we'll make that revision. Where does he see that, Doctor? Right on the top? Right on the top. Yes, sir. There's an upside-down colon in the second line of committee updates. We'll change that, thank you. Good catch. English major. All right. Allowing for those two revisions, I'll look for a motion to accept the minutes as revised. And a second. All in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you, appreciate it. All right, next slide, please. Here's our agenda today. We just did the quarterly minutes review. I'm going to give you a financial report. Then we're going to do some looking ahead at the future of the church. We'll have a time for discussion and questions. I've got an events calendar. I'm going to share with you the upcoming calendar, and then we will adjourn. Are you ready? Here we go. We did that. Next slide. Next slide. Financial report. Next slide. One more, please. Thank you. Appreciate it. So this is Q3, third quarter. So we're talking about July, August, September. I've got two columns there first. You've got giving for each month. So you can see July we had giving of $21,128, $24,000 in August, $41,082 in September. So for the third quarter giving, July, August, September, our giving was $86,219. Follow that line further to the right, and you'll see year-to-date giving of $279,378. That's the general fund, right? That's offerings. That's the general fund. Then we have other income. There are groups that use our facility, and they will give us monetary gifts from time to time. So that's facility use. In the third quarter, a little over $5,000. We've had a total of a little over $13,000 from those groups. So our general fund total, those monies go into our general fund. Total of them for the third quarter, $91,300. Year-to-date, $293,200. Are you with me so far? All right. So our 2002 general fund annual budget is $507,200. Our monthly income needed is $42,237. That's how much we need to run the church. Next slide, please. I said we have different sources of giving. We also have designated giving. If you write a check to go to the Wesleyan Building Fund, that's designated giving. If you write a check to go to Trout Lake Camp, that's designated giving. You've given that money for a specific line item. That doesn't go into the general fund. That money gets, we honor your gift, that money gets spent accordingly. So in the third quarter, $9,745 of designated giving, total of $43,500 over the year. Missions, we have a great group of missionaries, some of whom are here with us today. Third quarter, we had giving of $9,640. Year-to-date missions giving, $34,760. So total giving in the third quarter, everything all together, a little over $110,600. Year-to-date total giving, $371,505. Are you starting to tune it out yet? It's a lot of numbers. But let's press on. So let's look at all funds. Now we're going to compare income with expenses, what's come in versus what goes out. And I want to pause here and share with you, as I've shared with you for years, our staff here has always been very diligent about their spending. No one here spends willy-nilly, all right? So I want to point out to you that our income for the third quarter was $110,673, but we spent $120,000. So in the last 3 months, we spent $9,700 more than we took in, and then look at the next one to the right. Year to date, we have spent $85,762 more than has come in. You with me? Red bad. We have that Converge Cornerstone loan. That's the loan we all voted over a year ago to approve, and we've been taking funds from that and improving the church. We've got new windows, all kinds of new stuff. All right, in September, what we owed on that loan was $266,304. Our monthly payment on that is just below $2,000. And I mentioned that designated giving. This is something that people give specifically to. They give to this loan. So year to date, gifts of over $9,600 have come in. And when that money comes in, it goes directly to pay off that loan balance. It doesn't go to pay off the lighting bill. Are you with me so far? Next slide, please. I mentioned missions. Here it is in a little greater detail. For the third quarter, July, August, September, you gave $9,600.40, but we had missions expenses of $13,369. So we spent $3,729 more for missions. And Parnell, all of our missionaries are paid, right? We take monies out of the general fund. If we don't have the money to meet our commitment to our missionaries through mission giving, we draw from the general fund, we pay our missionaries. So year to date, we've taken in a little over $4,000 less in the mission fund. Okay. Next slide, please. Here's our current financial position. As of October 2022, we have 4 accounts. We have a checking account, 2 savings accounts, and an investment fund. Between those 4 funds, total monies, we have $66,500. To give you an example, in July, when I was with you to lead the last quarterly meeting, we had $107,050. So you can see in the last quarter, we've spent $40,550. Take a breath. This is heavy stuff. We're $85,000 in the hole. And it's not because you're not giving, you're giving diligently. We're $85,000 in the hole. Questions or comments about the financial presentation I've just given? Next slide, please. Next item on the agenda, looking ahead, planning our church's future. Let's talk. Next slide, please. I'm going to start with a little review. In the last meeting, we discussed the fact that COVID had had a dramatic effect on our church, a dramatic negative effect, as it has on countless churches. We're no different. We also talked about the fact last quarter that we realize we are a dwindling church. We can all look around and think of faces of loved ones and friends who used to go here and are no longer part of this congregation. And we said that as a board, we're certainly aware of this, and we weren't sure what to do, and we were looking at a variety of options and praying. Now, I'm going to pause here. I'm going to ask you a question. Have you ever asked God for something? God, I need a sign. Should I take this job? Should I marry this woman? Sometimes God gives you a great yes. Yes, marry that woman. I can't speak for you, but for me, most times, God doesn't answer right away. Come on. Sometimes God answers not with a yes, but in a no. God says, keep going. And He gives you a no. That's where we were at over a year ago. We were saying, God, what are we supposed to do? What do you want us to do? And God said, keep going. And we said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to this association. We're going to hone our vision. We're going to recommunicate why we're in business as a church. We are here to save souls. We are here to preach the gospel. We are a church, and that is why we are in business. And we said, okay, we're going to keep going. And we told you, this is what we're doing. We're honing our vision. We're going to tell all of our ministry leaders, we want you to use at least 3 of these 5 aspects of why we're in business in your ministry. And summertime was coming, and our youth and children's ministry took that and said, thank you for that guidance, and they ran with it. And through the grace of the Holy Spirit and the diligent work of our children's and youth ministry leaders, as Ben mentioned, and as we mentioned before, we had 10 salvations. 10 young people came to know Christ. And we celebrate that, and I would never discount that. Never, ever. But here's the issue. We took that vision and we were fast-tracking it. We were implementing it way quicker than it should have been because we said, we are running out of time. We got to make a change. And despite our best efforts and despite God's blessings, folks, we're continuing to dwindle. It's just happening. Our goal was that we would recommunicate our vision and that with the hope that others would want to come alongside us. And it's not happening. And it's frustrating. And so we said, okay, what, God? What? What? And this is where we're at. Next slide, please. We started exploring other options because God said, keep going. Keep going. We started exploring other options. What do we do? Because we're running out of assets, folks. And I don't mean money. We're running out of money. But that's third on my list. We're running out of people. We're running out of workers. It's tough to do ministry with a small group. All right? So we wanted to act from a position of strength. We wanted to be proactive, not reactive. We can keep the doors open as long as we want and eventually run out of people and money, and then what? Well, maybe we sell and become the world's largest Chick-fil-A. Ooh, no. This is a church. This is God's house. Next slide. So we started exploring other options, and we had 3 options come to us. And again, we're like, God, which one? And God's like, keep going. The 3 options were 3 different churches. In a relatively short time, there were 3 different churches that came to be known to us and we to them. And we said, ooh, maybe we're being told by God to enter into a relationship with one of these 3. And we did due diligence on all 3 of them, all at the same time. It's been a weird time to be a member of the Board of Stewards here at Lifepoint Church. And here's what God did. We looked at the first one, and God said, no. And we said, oh, look, this is a no. And then we looked at the second one, and we were really excited about the second one. And then all of a sudden it became obvious that God said, no, it's not that one. And we were continuing looking at the third option. And that's where God kept saying yes. Every step we would take in exploring this option, God kept saying yes. He closed 2 doors, and he kept one open. So here's what I'm here to share with you. Next slide. We, the Board of Stewards and the leadership in the church, are in the process of exploring becoming the newest Eagle Brook campus. Raise your hand if you've heard of Eagle Brook. Should have had you raise your hand if you hadn't. Would have been fewer hands. Thank you, sir. Even that young man has heard of Eagle Brook. That's what we're doing. Now, we've been doing this for months, and I can regurgitate details on you, and I'll be happy to do that, but I'm not going to use this meeting to do it. All right? But next slide, how did we arrive at this? Again, we've been praying about this and seeking God's guidance. And we got a lot of no's, and then we started getting yeses. And folks, they're a converged church. I love me some Chick-fil-A. I don't want this to be the world's largest Chick-fil-A. I want God's work to continue here. They're a converged church. They've done this before. Eagle Brook, as God has blessed Eagle Brook, has expanded their campuses. Sometimes they've built, sometimes they've adopted other churches that have become Eagle Brooks. And one thing we all agree on is our physical location is a prime spot for ministry. There are thousands and thousands of people within a stone's throw of this place that need to be ministered to, that need to hear the gospel, that need to hear the good news. And I'll tell you what, Eagle Brook is really good at that. You want numbers? I love numbers. Next slide. God is at work here, but God is dramatically at work at Eagle Brook. I called my friend Tyler over at Eagle Brook. We're new friends, become friends over the last couple months. I said, Tyler, give me your numbers over the last 5 years. How many baptisms have you had? Look at that. 7,530 people have been baptized at Eagle Brook in the last 5 years. How long have they been open? I don't know the answer to this one. Help me. How long has Eagle Brook been Eagle Brook, Mr. Nelson? About 15 years? In the last 5 years, they've had 7,530 baptisms. In the last 5 years, Eagle Brook has had 27,835 salvations. God's at work at Eagle Brook. And what myself and the Board of Stewards has come to realize is we can be a part of this. God is opening doors and saying yes to this process to us. We have the ability, the opportunity to be adopted by Eagle Brook. I'm going to take questions in a moment. I'm going to give you 2 more slides, maybe 3 more. Next slide. So what are the next steps? We have just started this process. So the next steps are this. We as a board have come to consensus that this is the way we feel we are being led to go. Our board has approved it. Their board has approved it. Their transition team is fired up about it. The next step is this. We schedule listening sessions. Listening sessions are where you and the board and the staff and representatives from Eagle Brook come, and talk about what this looks like. Because again, they've done this before successfully several times. So there's my first calendar thing for you. Take a look at that. We have 2 listening sessions scheduled for now. And I'm not telling you there's only going to be 2. The first is Tuesday, November 1st at 6:30 p.m. These will all happen here. We'll be here for these. Tuesday, November 1st, 6:30 p.m. The second one, Thursday, November 3rd at 10 a.m. Others to be scheduled. And again, this is an opportunity for you to come and hear more about the vision and the process and ask your questions. And then, after all of that has occurred and after everyone has said, okay, I feel as if I have enough information, then we will call a special business meeting, and the board would then bring a motion to you to, I don't know what it would say, something in effect of we want to go forward and become the next Eagle Brook campus, at which point we would hold a congregational vote. If you're a member here, you have the opportunity to vote on this. This is not a board edict. You, the congregation, would vote to approve this. I don't have that date yet. Next slide, please. So what's the timeline, Ross? When does this happen? I don't know. The timeline's to be determined. We have started this process. We've been in this for months, and we've just gotten to this point. And now we've got all the heavy work, all the negotiating. What do you do with all the Boy Scout stuff? When does Eagle Brook need to come in and start renovation of the building? Because they would renovate it. One thing they do say is their expectation, if time allowed, is that they would relaunch as Eagle Brook campus here sometime next fall. Okay? So, hang on, let me look at my notes. Thank you. So then the next question is, when would Lifepoint cease and Eagle Brook begin? Well, we don't know. That's part of the next part of the due diligence. Because what is their timeline? If you approve it, when would they need to come in? And I showed you our financials. How long can we stay in business? And I want to stress something here right now, and please listen to me. This is not a money problem. This is not a money problem. Our financial position is a symptom of everything else. God has been at work here for 149 years. And I would tell you that I feel that our church is just coming to an end. This is not a money problem. This is not, what if 2 people write a giant check and then we can stay open? We still need the other assets. We need the people to do ministry. I won't name names. I'll let you fill in the name. But Wednesday night, I was here for Wednesday night church. It was myself and one other dedicated children's ministry individual who then looped in another person. It was 3 of us grown-ups. We had, I think, 15 kids. We were overwhelmed. 4th and 5th grade kids are crazy. We don't have the people we need to run ministry here effectively. I don't want to paint a super negative picture, but I want to stress that. This is not a money problem. Don't leave here saying, boy, if we can just raise enough funds, we can keep going. The money is a symptom of the other issues. Deep breath. Your turn. Keith's got a microphone. What questions, comments, concerns do you have? Jacob, I have a red light on this. Is that a problem? Thank you.
Testing 1, 2, 3. It works.
What questions do you have? What do you want to say?
Where are these listening sessions going to be held?
They would be held here, most likely in the fellowship room. We would want to do them someplace where we can amplify the sound. We would think in the fellowship room, we're a little flexible on that, but they would be here at Lifepoint. Are we changing batteries? Yep. Hold tight. We're coming. Because I love the sound of my own voice, I'm going to offer an editorial comment. While Keith goes over here, we have a question over here.
Test. That's good.
10 years ago, I knew all about Eagle Brook. I didn't like Eagle Brook. You know why I didn't like Eagle Brook? Because people that I trusted told me I didn't like Eagle Brook. I'd never set foot in Eagle Brook. Never watched them. I didn't like them. It was us and them. But my brother and his family go. The twins are 13, Justin's 22. You know why they go? Because, man, it's exciting. God is at work. His kids love going to church. My parents are in their 80s. They go to Eagle Brook. You know why? They don't like the music. That's okay. But God is at work at Eagle Brook. And my parents are like, we want to be part of this. And so they volunteer at Eagle Brook and they go to Eagle Brook. I was wrong 10 years ago. That's my editorial comment. Yes, sir.
I got two questions.
If you would, nice and close.
Two questions.
Yes, sir. Question
The first one, did we talk to the congregation before the board reached out to Eagle Brooks? Did we consult the congregation before the board reached out to Eagle Brook? Secondly, the second question is, how have we been looking for workers? How have we been looking for people to serve?
Sure. So the first question, I want to clarify your first question. Are you asking if the board spoke to the congregation about the Eagle, our congregation? The answer is no. That's happening right now. We have spoken to the congregation repeatedly about the status of the church, where we're at as a church for years, and we've reviewed that certainly. But today is the first day that we're sharing about the conversation we're in regard to Eagle Brook. The second question is, what have we done to look for workers? Keith, what have we done?
Well, as a board member and being in leadership for a long time, I think we've made it evidently clear that we needed help in different areas. I know the different leaders, children's ministries asked for help in that area many times. We've just done it through, normal advertising in the, I call it the Times, Lifepoint, Pulse, and various areas as far as that goes.
Yeah.
Anybody else on the board? Pastor, you want to say something?
Yeah, I'll just say that our ability to meet the needs of our community and the ministry opportunities of our community is the issue. It's not that we don't have volunteers. It's not that we don't have people to do ministry. We've got people, people all over this congregation that tirelessly do ministry. That's not really the issue. The issue is the Lord is showing himself to be at work in our community among our teenagers and our children. There's so much opportunity that we just don't have the harvesters for. It's the relative. It's not that there aren't workers, there aren't volunteers. It is the size of the opportunity in our community is just so massive and is becoming even more so.
I would like to add to that too, though. As we look at the population of our church, Brad, you can help me out on this. I think the average age of the attender is in the mid to late 60s. Is that correct? 54. 54? I thought it was in the 60s.
54.
All right, you checked. All right. Nonetheless, we have an aging population, and I think it's tough even for a 54-year-old, which was the age of my wife, by the way.
Everyone, let's pray for Keith.
She's average.
Hang on. Let's pray for Keith right now. Heavenly Father.
I'm just glad as a husband that I know the age of my wife. But anyways, I completely forgot where I was going with that. I think what I was going to say was, if we need help in those younger age groups, should we expect people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s to help out in there? It's difficult. It's difficult. We need people of all age groups, and we have an aging population. We have a population that is literally dying. My own father passed away in February this year. I can think of numerous other people that have passed away, and so those people aren't here anymore.
Were your questions answered? Other questions? Raise your hands. We want to hear from you. And we're up top too. Good luck with that. How's your hip? You going to make it up the stairs?
What happens to the successful programs that are still working? You referred to Wednesday. We have a successful music ministry going here. What happens to those programs if we go the Eagle Brook way?
So a lot of the answers to questions, so just to make sure you heard, what happens? What happens to Lifepoint if this happens? Because there's a lot of successful stuff going on here. Well, Eagle Brook has a super successful children's ministry and a super successful youth ministry and a super powerful music ministry. That would come here. That would come here. Okay. Now, we do have ministries here that Eagle Brook doesn't do. Eagle Brook doesn't do Boy Scouts. We've been a chartered organization for Boy Scout troop for decades. 102 years. Eagle Brook doesn't do Boy Scouts. So there wouldn't be Boy Scouts here anymore. Eagle Brook does, why? Eagle Brook does not serve, they've chosen to not serve as a chartered organization. To be a Boy Scout troop, Brad, tell me if I'm wrong, you have to have a chartered organization. An organization has to support you. Eagle Brook has chosen to not do that, to not be a chartered organization for scouting. So if we were in Eagle Brook, it would fall under that. What was, somebody else said something?
Okay.
Oh, choir. Eagle Brook doesn't do choir. It's not part of their music ministry format.
Okay.
Hang on. I'm sorry. One more. What about our pastor? It's a great question. Our Lifepoint staff are Lifepoint staff. They're employed by Lifepoint. If we were to become an Eagle Brook, they would no longer work for Lifepoint. They would have the opportunity to apply for positions at Lifepoint. Eagle Brook, sorry. Thank you. I'm going to say it again. Lifepoint staff is employed by Lifepoint. If we became an Eagle Brook, they would no longer be employed here. They would have the opportunity to apply for positions at Eagle Brook or elsewhere if they wish, but there would be transition of one sort or another there. Yes, sir.
Okay, my question was, if the congregation votes no, so what will be the next step?
That's a great question. As I mentioned, you're not voting on anything today. I'm updating you what we've been doing for the last almost a year. And this will culminate in a congregational vote. If the congregation votes no, what happens? I would say, this is speculation. I would speculate in the short term we would continue as is. We would continue as is. And we reviewed where we're at now. Now, God can do anything. And I would never stand up here and limit God. But we're feeling as if this is where God is leading us to go. If you voted no, it's in your hands. You get to pick. You have the power. We have no other backup plan at this time. We would continue as is. Other board members, other thoughts about that?
And how long would we last?
How long would we last? How long would we last? Our expectation right now is that we're going to continue through the end of the year. We've got programming all through December. But one thing that determines how long we last is how long we can stay open. Again, we're running out of money. And this is not a money problem. It's just a statement of fact. And keep in mind, this doesn't count, our financial position doesn't account for giving from now through the end of the year. How long we would last would be determined by how long we can stay open and the timeline that Eagle Brook would need to begin transitioning. And probably other stuff that we're not aware of right now. Did I say that right, board members? I did not. What should I have said? Come on up. Give that man a microphone.
All of the financial numbers that were on the board today are based upon continuing to give. If you go home and say, no, I'm going to cut it off, It's days, not months.
And no, I'm good. I'm all mic'd up.
Come on out more.
Let me
Come out
just
of the
say,
shadows.
when the board and the leadership began asking the question, why do we exist as an organization, it changed the nature of the conversation. Because the conversation, we threw out the option, do we exist as an organization to meet the emotional and relational and spiritual needs of the people who are already here? And no one on the board was okay. No one on the board had a piece saying, yes, we exist as an organization to stay open as long as we can and continue to meet the emotional and relational and spiritual needs of the people who are already here and already have a relationship with Jesus. And so we started asking the question, well, what is a mission big enough and valuable enough to devote the rest of our lives to? And we came up with things like reaching people for Jesus. And when we started asking the question, okay, if that's what we're trying to do, how well are we doing at that? That changed everything about this conversation among the board and the leadership. And so asking the question, how long can we stay open? That's a terrible question. Because if that's our question, what we're saying is the point is to not shut down. And none of us, that's not good enough for us. That's not a good enough reason to spend $500,000 a year and thousands of man hours to just stay open. So whatever we do, it's got to be bigger than that. It can't just be, how long do we stay open?
I don't sleep well lately. Hopefully I'm going to sleep well tonight. This hit me a couple weeks ago, and I shared it with the board. I've been on the board way too many years. You keep electing me on. What is wrong with you? What is wrong with the board that they keep electing me as chairman? This is what hit me. For years, this has been me. This is my church. I need to save my church. I need to fix my church. What can I do? How can I lead? How can I donate? How can I serve to fix my church? And God told me, no, it's this. It ain't my church. It's God's church. And if whatever I'm doing like this is stopping God from being at work, get out of the way, Ross. It's God's church. It's not my church. What other questions, comments do you have?
Hang on.
What were the other two options, and if there are still possibilities of considering new options?
So that's a great question, and I have a ton of detail about that, and I've been thinking about that. I've been expecting this question, and I hope you'll respect my answer. I'm going to be vague. To avoid impropriety, I'm going to be vague. There were two churches. One is very similar to us in many ways, and their suggestion was that they would come here, and they had a vision for, I think it was a 2-year period, whereby we would slowly hand everything over to them, and we could join them. And that would prolong things, but they're really similar to us. Nothing wrong with them. The other one is my term, burgeoning future megachurch. And for quite some time, it seemed like this is the way to go. And yet there were definite no's. We kept getting a no and a no and a no. And though several of us on the board were excited, like, this is the one, you guys. I think this is the one. This is the one. This is how we're going to fix this church. God gave us no's. and gave them no's. I'm not going to go into other detail because I hope that's okay. Good question. What other questions do you have?
What happens to the Karen group when this happens?
So what happens to TKBC and the Thai Church and Ponte Vita, the three other congregations that meet here and use our facility? What happens to the Bible Study Fellowship that's been here for decades? What happens to Scouts? This is one reason we don't sleep at night. What happens to all these groups? Well, what happens to them is they would need to find new homes. This would be in Eagle Brook. Eagle Brook has a very specific business model. And I apologize. One of the most frustrating things about this for me is that over this entire process, all I can think to do is use worldly terms to describe spiritual things. And I apologize. This is going on the internet. I'm going to say it. Eagle Brook has a very specific business model. And business at Eagle Brook is good. But it's different than what we have. So those three congregations would need new homes. BSF, all the other groups, we've got 2 homeschool groups that use our facility during the week. There's a lot of moving parts here, and they would eventually go away. And that's one reason we have been trying to figure out how quickly we can, A, discern God's guidance for sure, and B, then start communicating. Because as I mentioned, we've been doing this for months, and we are finally here today. And there's a whole bunch more work that has to be done, including giving those ministry partners, if you will, the opportunity to start seeking new homes. Yes, sir.
We have a very much capable lead pastor, which I love a lot. In the process of all of this, did we think about bringing an evangelistic pastor on board, someone who will work alongside with the pastors, who the ear and the eyes mainly focus on bringing people in? Did we think about doing something like that?
Are you asking if we thought about bringing on another youth pastor or someone to partner?
Evangelistic pastor, someone who specifically deals with church growth.
Yes, got it. Yes, yeah, you're right. You're right. In fact, our last 2 children's and youth ministry leaders have been very dynamic. And our previous one, over time, has gone elsewhere. Our current one has accepted a new job that she's starting in January. And, hang on. I got to focus. You get it. It's my wife. I have to listen to her.
He's talking about an associate pastor.
An associate pastor.
For evangelism.
We have that. I would say we have that in Ben. We have that in Pastor Dan. Yeah. Right. Pastor Dan has been an amazing mentor to Ben. He's been an amazing pastor to the congregation. He's been an amazing pastor to us as the board. Yeah.
I just want to emphasize, too, that this Eagle Brook decision literally did not come about until Tuesday night of this week. So that is part of the reason why we don't have a lot of the answers to the questions you're asking. Really good questions. But just give us some time to sort through it.
Another answer to your question, another example of detail. This is not a 12-month thing or an 18-month thing or a 2-year thing or right before COVID had started. This is something we as a church have been experiencing for decades. When Pastor Peter, and many of you may not have been here when Pastor Peter Vogt was here, but he was hired and we said, we're working to invigorate this church. We would love for you to help us and lead us. And Peter implemented a lot of changes, and Peter was great. And Peter did some studying. He's a what is he? Professor. He's a thinker. And Peter came to the board early in his tenure, and he said, hey, I was doing the math. And every 10 years, we lose a little over 100 people. And we have been for decades. I think he went back 40 years. It's like, look at this. Every 10 years, we lose 100 people. So this is not a new idea. This is not we should have hired, maybe we hired this person and it fixes it. It's deeper than that. That's a good and fair question. Over here, please.
Look at my exercise, aren't I?
Yeah.
Are you counting your steps? 7,
Yep.
8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
Thanks. Could you answer a little bit more of Dan's question about what happens to the youth ministry, right? Youth and the children's ministry?
Yeah.
Because
So
we
right
have-
now,
just
Anchored
a-
Ministries.
just a
Oh, I'm
second.
sorry. I'm
'Cause
sorry. I'm
we
sorry.
have, a different kind of ministry, and it's a lot of discipling, and I don't know if that's how the business model of Eagle Brook works.
So if we become an Eagle Brooks brings in their children's and youth ministry, which is dynamic. And I'm not an Eagle Brook expert yet, though I know a lot more than I did a year ago. And they'll be able to speak to that in regard to the listening sessions. But this would be an Eagle Brook. It would be their youth ministry, their children's ministry, and however they do that would happen.
I think it's fair to say it would not look like it does now. It would definitely be different. Hang on, buddy.
Bonnie Erickson, board member, take a look.
I think, kind of relating to Ann's question, the Wednesday night program is Anchored Ministries.
Yeah.
That's not Lifepoint. And very much, I don't know, I can't speak to that directly, but they may be one of those entities that has to find another home. So.
Let me give you a little more clarification on that. So Anchored Ministries is we got a question back there, Keith. Anchored Ministries is Pastor Dan Munson's ministry. He created, copyrighted, or whatever you do with those, all right? And he did that because he and his family, his daughters in particular, have a heart for children and youth. And there was a need for children and youth here. And we don't have the assets to do it, and we're overwhelmed. And he said, all right, well, we'll be Anchored Ministries, and we'll partner with you. Amy, anything you would add? I'm going to put you on the spot. Yeah.
Hang on. Why don't you start over?
Just to clarify, so Children's does belong to Lifepoint Church. That is run through Lifepoint funds. That is run through all the policies, procedures, and everything of Lifepoint Church. The youth group, the last couple of years when Kobe left, has been run by Anchored through Anchored funds and with some support from the church, like Trout Lake Camp scholarships and the use of the facility. I have volunteered at Eagle Brooks Children's and Youth. They run it extremely different. They are driven much more less community. Like, we do pickup for 99% of our kids. That would not be something that would happen. So it's something where we will definitely be in talk with everyone, but yeah, the writing's on the wall.
Ken, did you have a question?
Yeah, hang on.
You all want me to order some pizzas? I'll do it. No? All right.
Am I to assume that all Eagle Brook churches look the same and there's no opportunities to establish any unique programs outside of that?
It's a great question. That's a question that could be answered in detail at a listening session, but our understanding is that the answer to that is yes.
Yes, what?
Yes, Eagle Brook has worked over the years to hone their vision and their ministry style. The other thing that I found really interesting is Eagle Brook has an answer for why they do everything they do. So if you go to an Eagle Brook service, there's fog in the room. There's fog in the room. You know why there's fog in the room? Because of the lighting. It lights up the stage better. It focuses the stage better. You know why they do that? To get rid of distractions around you. There's no distractions around you. You're focused on the stage, and you're focused on the message, and you're focused on the gospel. Everything they do, they don't do anything randomly. Everything they do has a purpose, a specific purpose. Other questions? Yes, ma'am. Wait, make him walk. Make him walk. You want to see him walk backwards? Walk backwards, Keith. Look at that. Dance, monkey, dance.
You may think this isn't the most important question. I want to know what happens to our name.
What happens to Renee?
Our name.
Oh, our name? We would be an Eaglebrook church. We would be Eaglebrook. We would be Eaglebrook.
Correct. No more
Correct.
Trinity, no more Lifepoint.
Correct. Yep.
Proceeding on this, there will come a day when Lifepoint ends. Legally, Eaglebrook insists that that occurs. This will not be, in that sense, a merger. There will come a day when Lifepoint ends.
There'd be a definitive end of Lifepoint and a definitive beginning of Eaglebrook.
In this facility.
In this facility, correct. Yep.
I have kind of been your tour guide in your taking your place. I've been walking.
Brad, a little closer to your mouth.
I've been walking the people through and giving them what I call the balcony to the boiler room tours. And the Eaglebrook crew that was here is very excited about not only the facility, but its location. They don't quite look at us as inner city, but we are far more urban than has been their traditional location. They are also looking forward to the fact that our neighbors here are different than their neighbors are in Lino Lakes, and that they are looking forward to ministering to those neighbors.
Other questions, comments, concerns? Yes, ma'am. Hang on. Because we're online, so we want to put you on a microphone.
What experience does Eaglebrook have with immigrants? Because that's a big focus of our ministry, and I'm not sure how these people are all going to find new homes and what it says to them that we're letting you go and we're letting our specific ministries to you go.
Yeah.
So I just want to know what their experiences and what their hearts are towards these populations.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I don't know. I don't know. I do know they have I do know they have multiple campuses all around the Twin Cities. They're currently implementing one in downtown Minneapolis. Mm-hmm. I do know this. Eaglebrook has a heart for people. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter who. Eaglebrook has a heart for people. Yeah.
I was just going to add to that. I think we're getting into the questions that are really best answered by Eaglebrook. I don't think we really should speak for them. I do know this, though, they wanted to get into what they call the inner city, urban ring, whatever you want to call it. They're doing that in Minneapolis with First Baptist right now in terms of changing that all over. So we might be their second experiment with this. And I don't know, but I probably even should have said that. Let's ask that question on November 1st and 3rd to them.
Yeah.
My heart is broken. I'm a long-term member, but I've been on the board many times also, and we have been wrestling with this issue for a very, very long time. And sometimes things do need to change, and we do need help. Because I'm getting older, we're all getting older, and I can't do what I used to be able to do. And I still want the love of God to come into this community. And if this is what we need to do, that's more important than Lifepoint or this member or that member. It's what we need to do. And this is hard to hear, and we need to process it. I'm not an instant jump on the bandwagon person. I have to process things. We all need to process this because this is really hard. This is hard to hear. But we need to also be open to what God needs to do.
Well said.
Something that I want to consider or have you consider as a board is it kind of feels like us and them. How do they incorporate the people that are in this building into their process? Maybe you don't have an answer to that today, but that's something that I think is important to each of us that contributes. And I don't mean financially only, I mean contributes in what we do weekly.
Sure. So, go ahead.
I was just going to add to that. They've done this before with congregations like ours. I think we should ask that question to them about how they did it with Spring Lake Park and some of the others. And actually, Pastor Dan can give you some insight into that too.
One point that was put up on a slide a couple slides back was to be negotiated. That's kind of got lost a little bit. We're bringing this idea to you now, but we are not bringing a proposal to vote on to date because that is yet to be negotiated. We are planning to meet with them to work through and answer some of these questions and then bring a much more detailed proposal that would be the thing that would be actually voted upon. So before you see a vote, you will see more details about how some of these translation matters will be dealt with. 2 slides back maybe, it was up there, to be determined. And the things you bring up today are exactly some things we need to meet and talk through with them. But we didn't want to put off talking through all those without giving you some idea that the discussions were going on. We had to get to a certain point, but we didn't get any further than that because we didn't want to delay bringing this forward. So lots of it is to be determined.
Tim, put up slide 16 for me, please. I want to remind you of these 2 initial dates if you don't have them down already. First listening session, Tuesday, November 3rd, 6:30. All of these are here. Second one, Thursday, November 3rd at 10 a.m. Yes, ma'am. Here comes Keith.
I was wondering if we could have some avenue to communicate either with the board or, when we've had a chance to process it, what our questions are, what our, so that you have a gamut of ideas that maybe the board hasn't thought of or, something we could contribute to the process.
I guess I'll speak for myself right now. I think that's part of the listening tour, I call it, those 2 sessions there as far as that goes. Or are you saying above and beyond those meetings, you want to have an avenue to speak to board members? Okay.
Yeah, Bonnie, what's your email?
So, real quick, I'm going to add to that question. Are you talking specifically before those meetings? Because those meetings are kind of pretty quick. Because that's what I hear Heather Marie saying. Is that correct, Heather?
Yeah. You can always email the board.
Yeah, I'm pretty certain that in the directory, I believe all of our emails are listed. I could be wrong on that, but I see a lot of heads shaking yes. And mine is coachk1220@gmail.com if you want to email me.
Tim, put up slide 23 for me. Under the category of be careful what you ask for, there's my cell phone. Tim, take down slide 23. No, leave it up. Here's the process, and that's a great question. It starts with these listening sessions that allows Eagle Brook, the experts that have all the answers and all the detail and all the minutia, the opportunity to share that and answer questions and address concerns and fears.
Who's leading the listening sessions?
Hang on.
Who is leading the listening sessions?
It'll be led by a combination of Lifepoint Board of Steward members and 2 or 3 people from Eagle Brook, who this is a big part of their role at Eagle Brook.
I think it's fair to say, though, that the Eagle Brook people, leaders, will probably answer a majority of the questions.
So there's my cell phone. If you want to text me, don't call me. I pay $200 a month for cell phone service. I can stream stuff. I can play Minesweeper. I can text. I can email. It doesn't work as a phone, people, and I'm frustrated. Don't call me. Text me. Tell me who you are, and I will call you back. I promise. If you want to talk about this, text me. I'll call you back.
Seriously, look in the directory. If it's not there, call Ross, call myself. I know my phone number's in there. I'd be more than happy to give you the email address again, okay?
Other questions or comments? Brad, did you want to say something? Okay. We're done. All right. All right. Tim, slide 19, please. Let's move on. Church calendar. Let's talk church calendar. Tracy Rood is hosting her 23rd annual potluck pumpkin party next Saturday. She wants you all to come. Is this a church-wide event? This is a church-wide event. Tracy would love to have you come to her party. There's a QR code. You can talk to Tracy. She sends out emails. Bring a pumpkin for the carving contest. We eat a potluck dinner at 5:30. Bring something to share. There will be fire. It will be a good time. We would love to have you come. Tracy, wave at everybody. Okay, see Tracy. Next slide, please. More church calendar things. Women's Christmas brunch. Tickets are going on sale in November. The brunch is scheduled for Saturday, December 3rd. Put that on your calendar, please. Special guests will be the River Valley Singers. Steve Johnston, many of you remember Steve Johnston, longtime music leader here. He has a group called the River Valley Singers. They will be providing music for that. Women's Christmas brunch, Saturday, December 3rd. And then this same group is going to perform a concert here, Monday, December 12th at 7 p.m. Does it cost anything? Doesn't cost nothing. Knowing Steve, he'll take an offering. Put that on your calendar. Monday, December 12th, Christmas concert. Next slide, please. Our church Christmas choir concert, Lifepoint Church Christmas Choir Concert. We're going to partner with the Twin Cities Mass Choir. Is Sunday, December 18th, 10 a.m. Lifepoint Christmas Choir Concert, Sunday, December 18th, 10 a.m. And then Christmas Eve candlelight service. Want to guess what day the candlelight service is on Christmas Eve? It is the 24th, you're right. December 24th, 4 p.m., Christmas Eve candlelight service. Next slide, please. There'll be no worship on Sunday, December 25th, and worship then will again continue Sunday, January 1st. Those are your calendar items. You want to see any of those screens again? All right. I love you guys. I love this church. Thank you. Some of you more than others right now. I'm good with that. Hang on, let me pick on someone to pray for us. Hillary Healy, Vice Chair of the Board of Stewards, is going to close us in prayer.
Oh, man. I'm regretting my voluntold. Okay. Oh, Lord Jesus, you're here with us, and help us feel your presence. Help us to take some time to process everything we've heard today, everything that you're telling us. Help us continue to discern what you want for your church, capital C. We love you, and please be with all of these lovely people that are heading out into the world today, and just help them be your hands and feet here on earth. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, folks. You are adjourned. Yeah, we're not doing that.